Right now in California, Marines standing guard outside a federal building in Los Angeles. The Marines were deployed to that city to replace the National Guard troops that were stationed there since immigration raids set off protests across that metro area last week. Similar protests in support of immigrants have erupted throughout the country, and there's going to be more tomorrow ahead of President Trump's military parade in Washington, D.C. So today, Sammy went to a training by a local nonprofit that was explaining to folks their rights should they decide to go out and protest for whatever cause they believe in.
Come on, y'all, grab the pan dulce, grab the coffee.
Comfort food before an uncomfortable conversation.
It's not an easy video to watch.
Ryan Perez is an organizing director for Communities Organizing, Latino Power and Action.
So that's going to be really important.
And leading a training put together by the Immigrant Defense Network, a coalition of groups supporting immigrant families.
We can all make individual choices about civil disobedience. But what we're talking about today is completely legal.
Perez is explaining what rights people have to document ICE and how this translates to potential protests. He wants people to confidently have a hand in change.
Obstruction is I put my body in front of the person. Not only is it not legal, it's not really helpful because at the end of the day, you'll just also get arrested.
But protest history is complex, and the way history sees lawful and unlawful demonstrations is too.
I'm kind of dumbfounded by the lack of sophistication in our media and law reporting and commentary when there's a lot of law and history that's relevant to this. And they're not talking about it.
Steve Young, former dean of Hamline University School of Law, says if protesters decide to break the law, they should be ready to pay a price.
Martin Luther King taught, and the civil rights leaders in the South, is if you break a law, you have to be prepared to pay the consequences. You break a law, you know you're going to be arrested, but you justify it to yourself, and you go to jail for 10 days, you pay the fine, because you brought news attention to your cause.
He brought up Rosa Parks, who refused to move from her seat from a Montgomery, Alabama bus in defiance of Jim Crow laws. He mentioned another example, the march in Selma and Bloody Sunday, where civil rights marchers were illegally attacked and beaten by state troopers. Young says police need to be held accountable too.
The question is, did the police make a mistake? Are the ICE arrests or something, do they violate a law? We have a system for dealing with that. It's called the courts.
I should identify myself for my protection.
But the people training today say they have little trust that officers will be held accountable. Perez pointed to the Florida sheriff, who said they will protect lawful protesters but kill people who hurt law enforcement.
If you throw a brick, a firebomb, or point a gun at one of our deputies, we will be notifying your family where to collect your remains at.
As long as we're not touching, we haven't violated the law.
That's why Perez is teaching people how to lawfully protest.
And we're trying to train one way to respond, which is to be calm, to document, and to make sure that people's civil rights and civil liberties are protected. That's the end of the presentation.
Now, St. Paul police told us they expect 10,000 participants for the planned march to the Capitol tomorrow. Organizers expect double that. St. Paul police say they are working to ensure everyone is safe and their First Amendment rights are expressed peacefully at that event.
Yeah, and protests since the inception of this country have been a part of it. No matter who you voted for, what you believe in, you have a right to do that peacefully. I think it's interesting to note, too, just how many in Minnesota. I was reading today, of counting the small ones, 42 different events tomorrow where people are having their voices heard.
Yeah, and, you know, Young also pointed out that these protests feel different.
Yeah.
It's about just this different subject matter that, of course, has always been in debate in this country, but he hasn't seen a reaction like this.
All right, well, we pray everybody's safe tomorrow and gets out and has their voices heard. Thank you so much, Sammy.